Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about the downfall of Square Enix. Now you're probably thinking Square Enix is a huge company and that there's no way that it's actually going to be going anywhere, especially since it has ties to things like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. But with a recent article, I kind of wanted to talk about this and share some of my thoughts. So let's talk about it. So a couple of days ago, an article showed up on TweetTown that states, Square Enix global aspirations hindered by PlayStation exclusivity. Final Fantasy publisher Square Enix wants to simultaneously release games across all markets, but this move has been hindered by exclusivity deals. Now, this article kind of inspired me to want to talk about this, but the thing is, I'm not really going to be using this article because this article is only geared towards PlayStation for some reason and how they have this exclusive deal with PlayStation when it comes down to certain games. But I kind of want to gear this more towards Square Enix as a whole. And it's not just their deals with PlayStation. They have made exclusivity deals with things like Xbox and even with Switch. So there's a lot to unwrap here. So everyone knows that Final Fantasy VII is a game that is just tied to the PlayStation when it comes down to the consoles, and this release of this game has been very, very confusing. It initially released in 2020 and it was exclusive to the PlayStation 4, and then a year later they brought it back with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, which was exclusive to the PlayStation 5, and a year after that they brought it into the Epic Game Store, which it had exclusivity for 6 months, and then later that year in 2021 they finally announced that it's coming to Steam, and yet there is still no signs of it ever coming to Xbox. And a lot of people are kind of running with the idea that this game is never coming to Xbox, and especially recently because of the filings from Microsoft's ABK deal, a lot of people are running with a quote and they're actually misquoting it, but this is the quote here. In addition to having outright exclusive content, Sony has also entered into arrangements with third-party publishers which require the exclusion of Xbox from the set of platforms these publishers can distribute their games on. Some prominent examples of these agreements include Final Fantasy VII Remake, Bloodborne, the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI, and the recently announced Silent Hill 2 Remastered. So that is the actual quote that people are trying to go and say that this proves that these games are never coming to Xbox, but I disagree. If you look at these games, of course Bloodborne is never coming to Xbox because that is a Sony owned IP, but when it comes to Silent Hill 2 Remastered, it is launching on everything except for Xbox whenever it does release, and that it does have a 1-year exclusive window, so there's no other real platform to bring it on other than Xbox. So at that point they probably will bring it to Xbox a year later. And it's also been confirmed that Final Fantasy XVI only has a 6-month exclusive window on it, which again, we may or may not be able to see that on Xbox because we don't really know with these deals when it comes down to Final Fantasy, since PlayStation seems to be trying to lock down Final Fantasy really hard these days. Now, this is just them talking about exclusions from their platform, not ever saying that these games are never coming to Xbox. Now, in my own opinion, I do think that Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be coming to Xbox at some point whenever they are finished with the trilogy. I think that they are going to go and do a collection and launch it on Xbox. But right now, as it stands, we are assuming that this franchise is pretty much never coming to Xbox. Now, it's really weird because of the way that the Final Fantasy franchise has been handled when it does come to Xbox. Every major release of Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy 13 has come to Xbox except for Final Fantasy VII. And that is oddly enough, that is the one that I am most excited to play, that I have yet to get my hands on because I've just been waiting for it to come to Xbox since it is my preferred platform. Now, what's weird about it is I think exclusivity is harming what's going on with Square Enix. And it's not just Final Fantasy VII, but we'll look at Final Fantasy as a whole. So you have Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is not on Xbox. You have Final Fantasy Crisis Core Remake, which is on Xbox. But Crisis Core Remake is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. So why have the prequel to a game that you're never going to be able to play on the console on the console? This is not going to do well for you. This is not going to do well numbers wise whatsoever. And this is something that Square Enix has said before that they're facing issues with, is their sales. Sales are not where they expect it to be, and that a lot of people run with this narrative that Japanese games don't perform well on Xbox. And it's because of the fact that they don't support Japanese games on Xbox. Go figure, right? So how do you get more sales on Xbox when it comes down to Japanese games? You have the series start coming to that platform, and you have it to where it is a steady release and you can grow that franchise. Something like Yakuza. Yakuza is doing very well on Xbox. And in fact, they've even stated that the Yakuza franchise is very pleased with the numbers that Xbox was able to do with their Game Pass results, and that they even give a lot of credit for Yakuza being so adopted in the West because of Xbox. And this is a franchise that now I am wanting to get invested in, and I can get invested in because I have every single release on Xbox, and now whenever these games do come out, they are coming to Xbox at the same time. We are getting support from things like Danganronpa and support from things like Persona, and these games are doing well. Persona 5 just passed 3.3 million units sold, even though it's in Xbox Game Pass. But now, where is the narrative for that? Why is no one saying that these games are failing? Because they're not, because they're being supported. They're bringing them to Game Pass. They're bringing them to a larger audience to allow for a great adoption rate. Whereas when it comes to things like Final Fantasy, you are hindering the growth immensely because of how you handle that franchise on that platform. And you, like I said with Final Fantasy Crisis Core, a remake to a game that you're never going to be able to play, a remake to a prequel, to a sequel you will never be able to play on the Xbox platform. And you also get other releases like Strangers of Paradise, the Final Fantasy spin-off, which is really odd. Like, why are you giving us all the spin-offs? You're giving us all the prequels, but you're not giving us the mainline entries. We're not getting Final Fantasy VII Remake, we're not getting Final Fantasy VII Reborn, and we're not getting Final Fantasy 16. Now, even though it's been exclusive for 6 months, Final Fantasy 16 still might not be brought to Xbox. Where is Final Fantasy 14? Final Fantasy 14 is what is arguably keeping Square Enix afloat, but this game has yet to be seen on Xbox. Xbox has talked about how they're trying to get this game over to their platform, and Square Enix has also stated that the reason why they haven't brought it to Xbox is because they don't have the resources. They don't have the resources to one of the biggest MMORPGs of all time. Is bizarre to me. It is really bizarre. So you see how they handle the Final Fantasy series. You see how they even handled back in the day how they did Kingdom Hearts. You had Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3. But there is many stories in between those that are told, but were told through other platforms. So if you had a PlayStation 2 that was great and you're able to play Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, but you wanted to play Kingdom Hearts 365 and a half days, well, you needed a DS. You wanted to play Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, well, you needed a PSP. You wanted to play some random Kingdom Hearts X game, well, you need to get on a browser. If you wanted to play this other random Kingdom Hearts game, well, you needed that specific phone and you needed to download it off of this specific thing. And so you have a disjointed story that you can never see completed, but now that they finally brought it to everywhere, now you have the opportunity. That was what Square Enix has always done. It's just these weird, odd releases. They kind of get a dart and throw it at the board and see where it lands, and that's where they're going to release the game. And so you even look at other franchises. Octopath Traveler. This game launched exclusively on Switch for a year and then showed up on Xbox Game Pass, and now it's available on Xbox. But the thing is, it's not on PlayStation. But Octopath Traveler 2 is on PlayStation 5 and Switch, but it's skipping out on Xbox. Why? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for PlayStation players to invest themselves in a brand new game that's the sequel to something that they can't actually go and play. That makes zero sense. Now, I know that these games are separate and that their stories are separate, but if you have a game that people love and they want to go back and play the first one, well, now they can't. Another title that is also exclusive to PlayStation is Forspoken, which has a 2-year exclusivity window. Now, all these exclusives aren't just geared towards PlayStation. There's also a lot of exclusives that are on Nintendo, like the Live Alive series, Tactics Ogre, Triangle Strategy. There's a lot that is coming only to Switch and not anywhere else, when it would benefit them a lot to release these other titles on these other platforms. Now, because of the fact that the games that do launch on Switch are more niche, they kind of don't have that big budget that necessarily requires Square to release them on multiple products. And because of the player base on the Switch, a lot of the games that are targeted for that audience are designed specifically for them in mind. Now, when it comes to the other titles like Final Fantasy 16, like Forspoken, and like Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Intergrade, and Reborn, these things are huge budgets, and unless Sony is paying them a lot and money hatting these, as some people like to say, they are not sufficient by any means. They need that other third party person. They need a PC release. They need a Xbox release in order for these games to do well. And they've also made other exclusivity deals with Microsoft. They've had a lot of their games enter Game Pass. You've had a lot of deals where Final Fantasy has come into Game Pass at some point. You have had that one very infamous deal with Rise of the Tomb Raider and them locking it down for a year, and everyone kind of shit their pants because of that. But a lot of information came out of that because of the uproar behind it. So you look at the Tomb Raider IP and you see how big and popular Tomb Raider is. And Xbox came out and said that they spent $100 million for that exclusivity window, which is a huge amount of money for a 1-year exclusive. And this goes into the conversation of the fact that because of where Xbox is on the totem pole when it comes down to consoles, they're going to have to spend more money in order to make those exclusive deals, because they don't have the same player base that PlayStation has. And a lot of people see that. And that's also a lot of the reason why you see a lot of Japanese companies kind of just moving towards the PlayStation releases and not really bothering with the Xbox release, because Xbox has no presence in Japan whatsoever. But things are changing, times are changing, and this is a different, every console generation is a different race. And so now we kind of expect all these games to release simultaneously on either platform. Why am I going through this long list of where these games are landing and these exclusivity deals? Well, because it's important to realize that when you have these releases and they are just staggered the way they are and they drop on random platforms the way they drop on, it kind of doesn't put any faith in the consumer as to what you're going to be doing with these IP that they love. Whenever a brand new trailer comes out for a Square Enix game, you know what the most important thing about that game trailer is? It's the fact that we have to wait until the very end to see what consoles that game is launching on. That is bizarre. That is not something that you should expect from a company that is a multi-platform company. Whenever Take-Two comes out with a brand new game trailer, you can expect it to be on PlayStation and Xbox. Whenever Ubisoft comes out with a new trailer, you can expect it to be on Xbox and PlayStation. Whenever Nintendo comes out with a new trailer, you can expect it to be on Nintendo. Whenever Xbox comes out with a trailer, you can expect it to be on Xbox, Game Pass, PC. Whenever Sony comes out with a trailer, you can expect it to be exclusive on PlayStation for a bit and then move over to PC. There's expectations that you can exceed whenever it comes to these game releases by these companies. When it comes down to Square Enix, you have no clue as to where they're going to be dropping their games. And that is a huge detriment to you. That is a huge detriment to you. You are stifling sales on other platforms because people are either waiting or not buying it. So there's just like, you are literally killing your own franchises by not supporting the game franchise where they grew and developed, and they're continuing to do that, and it's just so odd. Now, the thing about Square is that it's not just the way their games come out. It is the fact that they are also investing heavily in random things that end up not really doing well for them. So like Babylon's Fall. Babylon's Fall came out 2022 and it was one of the biggest flops of all time and is getting shut down in 2023. Within 1 year of it being out, that game flopped hard and is just going to be wiped off the board forever. You also see what they did with Outriders. They did not believe in Outriders whatsoever, so they ended up taking that Game Pass money, and it actually blew up on Game Pass, and the game did surprisingly very well. In 2022, Square Enix ended up selling their Western divisions for $300 million to Embracer Group. $300 million for Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, and all of the IP that they've ever done, which includes the likes of Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Legacy of Kain, and Thief, as well as many other random IP that you might know. That is bizarre. That $300 million. So put that into perspective, the deal for Xbox to pay for exclusivity for 1 year for Tomb Raider was $100 million, a third of the price that they could have bought the whole entire division of Crystal Dynamics and Embracer. That makes zero sense. That is a steal for Embracer. Those divisions are very, very talented, and to sell the Tomb Raider rights is really odd because it is a very successful franchise. Tomb Raider franchise sales hit 95 million units globally. Tomb Raider has cemented itself as one of the best-selling video game franchises in history. The total sales of all titles in the series about Lara Croft adventures are now approaching the 100 million mark. This makes Tomb Raider one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time, sitting between the likes of Monster Hunter with 88 million units sold, Halo with 81 million units sold, Resident Evil 130 million units sold, and The Sims 175 million units sold. The franchise has sold more than 95 million units since the first title came out in 1996, according to a press release. This is 7 million copies more than Embracer Group reported after acquiring Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal from Square Enix for $300 million. That is crazy. That is a crazy thing. Doesn't make any sense. Even financially, it makes no sense to sell off Tomb Raider whatsoever. Another reason why this company is on this downhill spiral is because of the fact that they are still investing heavily in NFTs when no one is talking about NFTs anymore. NFTs have dropped a huge amount ever since that they've come out. In the newest president's letter that he gave out to the company regarding the status of Square Enix and them moving forward, they talked about NFTs as a big interest for them to continuing forward. The NFTs and blockchain, but this is a dead thing. No one's investing in NFTs anymore. So this company is literally just losing money, and they sold off their Western division to help continue to invest in those big mistakes. They talk about having a one united Square Enix, but you can't have a united Square Enix if you keep just having exclusivity randomly throughout the gaming industry. This company is just losing it just over and over and over again. And it's sad to see that this company, which a lot of people consider some of his games some of the greatest games of all time, to be in this position. Now, a lot of people expect that Square is probably going to get gobbled up at some point, probably by PlayStation, since they do make a good, they do have a good partnership with one another. But at the same time, you never really know. They need to really focus, and they need to really come together and figure out what they need to do going forward. And I think this exclusivity is actually doing more harm than good, especially with the rising cost of games and the amount of time it takes to develop these games. It is costing a lot more, and you can't actually have these misses. You can't have another Babylon's Fall again, because that is not what you need on your docket at all. You can't have another Avengers moment where you just tank. You just can't have that. And they keep continuing to have these bad games, but they have some great IP attached to them, and they really can turn it around if they focus and they just stop trying to just sell to the highest bidder. If they just stop trying to invest in things that we all know aren't gonna pay back at all. So it's really sad to see the state of Square, but I do hope that they bounce back at some point, and I do hope that the Final Fantasy franchise continues on and does very well. And I hope that we get to see it on Xbox someday. But right now, it's just a pipe dream. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. If you liked what you saw and you'd like to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And I'll be seeing you guys on the next one. Remember, take it easy.